Okay, well, I was going to pull up your, whatever you turned in already and look at the different scenes and stuff, but we'll have to do that next time because I can't get the canvas now either. So I just want to talk about materials for a little bit, and then we'll use this as our next assignment to use that same scene that you created for the modeling assignment to make a material assignment. So in general, I just want to go over the basics of adding materials to objects and then let you loose to work on adding those materials to your objects in your scene. So we had a table. Let me just open up. Yeah, we just had a table with some legs, and I think I also wanted to do one more modeling thing. This hopefully won't take too long, but I'm just going to use a line and make a vase-like object, because this brings up another little issue here. Not really issue, but I'll make that as horizontal as I think it needs to be. Click and right click. So here's a single object that I could use the lathe tool on, and that's not on that. Hang on. Sorry. That should get us there. Okay, so I just made a line out of this, and maybe I want to change the interpolation to adaptive to make it a little smoother. Then in the Modify panel, I want to go spline level, and I'm going to use the outline. I just want to show you what this does, really. And there's a lot of cool tools in there, but so I'm going to outline. That gives the vase some thickness. See what I mean? So I'll make that a thin-ish kind of whatever. And let's edit some of these vertices here and smooth those out. Let's go Bezier on those so I can adjust them a little bit. So not that smooth. Maybe even put a little bulb kind of action on this thing. Maybe make a Bezier corner. And bend that out. Whatever. Okay. So add a lathe modifier. Set it to minimum. And there's the vase, right? Well, more like a pot, I guess. There you go. Nice little lip, though. I like that edge. Okay, maybe increase that number of sides, make it smooth. And let's say I'm happy with that. So I want to put a material on it. I want that to be like a glass vase. So let's try that. Go to the material editor, or M on the keyboard. And generally speaking, if we're going to use an Arnold renderer, right, and we can look at those settings in the render setup, that's the teapot with the gear on it. And if I go to renderer, well, it already tells me what renderer I'm using up here. Typically, the scanline renderer is going to be fast but not very pretty. The Arnold's going to be a good mix of realistic and good speed. Art renderer will do iterative rendering. It's the Autodesk Ray Tracer renderer that actually bounces light and traces the light through the scene. Arnold is similar to that in those respects, that it can be somewhat accurate in its rendering. So anyway, with that Arnold renderer, some materials are compatible with that and some aren't. And some lighting is compatible with that and some aren't. So that's why we have to pay attention to which renderer you're using when we start talking about materials and lighting. Okay, so easy enough to start with the physical material. There's a ton of things that we can do with this, and we'll talk about these, and we'll just get into it today a little bit. So for this, I'm just going to add that material to this bucket. Was going to be a vase, but I didn't make a very good one out of it. So I can change the color, I guess. But to start off, let's use a thin geometry or solid geometry glass. So thin geometry here. And without any lights, the rendering is going to be a little tricky, not going to show too much, but it looks okay, I guess, to start with. I can already tell, like right there, see how it's kind of pinching those edges in there? So I need to weld the core and render that again. And so now it's gone. See? So I got rid of that pinched, where all those vertices were kind of getting together, so that's all. And I think I don't need to cap the end. Let's try to render that. Was that capping that? There we go. Okay, so that produces, without good lighting, a good enough representation of glass. So we can change the color of the glass and some other things in here. And that's going to be, well, there's a few things that we could do. Where should we start? Maybe I want to change the material mode to advanced so I can look at reflections and transparency a little bit more in depth here. So the depth of the transparency actually is for solid geometry. I think that's why it's zeroed out here. Yeah, so if I uncheck thin walled, whereas maybe it is thin walled, but maybe I could set the depth. Now, I didn't really pay attention to how big that was, but let's try 0.1 and then change the color to something I can tell. I don't know if that's going to do it because I wasn't paying attention to the size here, but let's see. Not really, not really. Oh, I didn't, how come that, oh, let's just change that and try it. Yeah, a little bit too dark, but that gives a nice little effect, some red glass or something. So a quick way, and then you can see the reflection of the milk bottle in it. Nice quick way to produce some slightly different effects. You can add some roughness to make it not such a smooth type of glass, like maybe a rougher, so you can play with those values as well. So anyway, that's kind of just a preset way to affect a surface. Let's look at maybe the table next. So I have this table here, and maybe I want it to look like something, like an image that I would get off the internet that I could tile or something. I think we've all had the Photoshop class maybe, or at least know how to make something tileable. We could actually spend some time in that, but I don't think I have my Photoshop account set up, so I can't sign in. Just like Zoom. So let's try that with the table. I'll just add another physical material and add it to the table. Now, well, without going on the internet and finding like some textured wood, there is some wood material in here, but it's not that great unless I use, and we'll get to the OSL shaders materials in a minute, but actually maybe we could try the advanced wood, and I'll use that for the diffuse color. So I put the base color map there. I don't know how compatible this is actually with the Arnold renderer. I think it works. And so I add the roughness to the roughness map and the bump to the bump map, which is down here. Okay, I don't know what kind of scaling I have for this yet, so let's just see what that normally looks like. I could just do a test render this way. And yeah, that's nice. I don't think it's, that does look pretty good, but I kind of wanted it the other direction, right? And I don't know that, I can't remember how I built this. Was that just a rectangle that I extruded or beveled with a bevel profile? Yeah, I think it was. So I might want to add, yeah, it's a bevel profile. I think it generates, oh, let's just try generate mapping coordinates. And that way, just by doing that, you know, it shifted that a little bit, but I do want the grain to, I mean, that's typically not how you see a table's grain. It goes kind of the other way. So we can either use that in the, on the map here. Well, where is the map? Yeah, we can change the axis, and I think I probably want it on the y-axis, so yeah. That looks more like a table. So what's neat about that is you can see kind of the core of the wood on the side of the table, which is an interesting effect, or that the advanced wood map has. So that's already pretty decent. We can affect the bumps a little bit different. I think the bumps are kind of easiest to see on the edge of the map, and you can sort of see in the grain a little bit, but those can be affected also just in the amount of bump that you have. So you can adjust that amount. You probably don't want to put it very high. Well, let's just see what that does. All it does is add contrast between the highlights and shadows of the individual little ridges. So it's basically taking that same image and getting a grayscale image out of it and increasing the contrast of it by jacking those numbers up. So probably a little too much for a nice table, I guess. And so now I can see some artifacts popping off the side there. So for an old table that's losing its lignin, I suppose that would be a, a decent way to do that. But I'll put that back at point, maybe a little less than 0.3, just for a small amount of grain in there. So, and the roughness also adds to, we can just take that away. I don't know, how did I have that roughness on there anyway? Yeah, it was at 0. So let's, with the roughness map on or off, it wouldn't have mattered. Well, actually, it would matter on that. So the amount of roughness varies across the surface depending on the grayscale image of that map. So similar to bump, it basically blurs it or makes it a little rougher as far as reflections go, right? So see if we can see the difference with and without it. So back to a normal bump map. Okay, let's make a copy of this. Or clone it, I mean. And then take the roughness map off, render it again. See if we can tell a difference here. Where'd it go? I think it went away. So this is with, I don't know if you can tell, the reflections maybe in the milk bottle can tell us the difference there. I'll put that back. I don't know what happened to my other map. Roughness. And then refresh that. So now we can see that the milk bottle's reflections in the table is a little bit more blurred or muted. So, and maybe coincides more with the grain of the wood too. So that's nice to be able to do. There's other settings in there, and I encourage you to play with those or work with those. So that's That's just using an advanced wood material, so that's a fun one. What else should we try? The table legs. I would use the advanced wood on the table legs, but let's try a floor, I guess, and use a map that we look somewhere else. So I guess I should put a plane on the floor here. Oh, here's that channel. Yeah, I'm not sure why I didn't see that before. Yeah, I'll zoom out, put a big old floor down, and lower it to the bottom of the legs. And we'll add a material to it. We'll start with a physical material again. And this time, maybe I want to look online and try to find some sort of tile or something. There is some good tile kind of procedural shapes in there, but what if you wanted your own custom one or something? So, or even a carpet or something, like this carpet. How about carpet tiles? And then I gotta look for one that actually has like a orthogonal view of it. Yeah, this would probably be an interesting one to try to tile across the floor, but okay. Yeah. I want to use some Photoshop work and make those divisions in between them. Maybe put a darker color for a groove in between them, but I'm good with that. So I'm going to just copy or save this image. I'll put it on the server so we can all play with it, I guess. Yeah, that'll work. So it doesn't need to be this name. Just carpet tiles 01. All right. So I want to use that as my base color map, right? So I could drag the node that is supposed to connect to out into the middle of nowhere, or out into the middle of the view port in the material editor, let go, and go to General and Bitmap. And this is the way that you can browse for images that you have saved on your computer. So that's where we're going. I'm looking for carpet tile. There it is, and okay. All right, so let's see what that does. Well, I'm going to adjust the tiling amount, but let's just add it to the floor now. And that looks great. So one of the problems, well, there's two problems. One, it's too big, right? So I can adjust the tiling amounts to increase that, the number of times it's being repeated on the surface, so that's the tiling amount. And I also should match the number of tiles on the U and V direction, which is the same as the X and Y direction, just locally. So if I look at the properties of this plane, I can see maybe I should just use a number that makes sense, right? So maybe it's going to be 1,000 by 2,000. Okay, that way I can just double the number of tiles in the V direction, actually the other way. So I'm going to tile these up until I think I like what I see, maybe 12. And then I'll double that number in the U direction, which is the X direction. And 24 is twice 12 is the last time I checked. And so now my tiles come out. They still don't look exactly rectangular or square. So I had to increase that number a little bit to get it to fit right. We can also rotate it. So on the W direction is the Z direction. So if you don't want them exactly, I mean, this looks great, but let's say 45 degrees. So these tiles are being rotated 45 degrees. Doesn't look that great. That is not what I was after. There's 90, but it's being stretched. Oh, yeah, so maybe I want to use 30 and 30. See if that 45 looks better. Not really, not really. Let's put that back. All right, so yeah, just using the tiling amount, we can adjust those tiles. Now, what I would also do is try to create a bump map out of this by taking a grayscale version of the bitmap and make it and add that to the bump channel. Perhaps, I don't know if I have GIMP on here. Yeah, I do. Okay, so maybe I can do this. Photoshop's not working. So I'll open this image up and I'll try to create like a roughness channel or a bump channel. Typically those are going to work pretty well. All right, here's my carpet tile. Maybe the easiest way to do this is just go to colors and use a, well, there's a couple ways to do that. I could just desaturate it. Take the, there's a better way. What's the better way to do that? Nope. I'll just, there was a better way, but anyway, saturation works okay. So, so I can take that down, and now this thing is totally black and white. Before I do that, I want to make these grooves black, and I think that'll be good for the bump channel in between them. And so maybe the magic wand tool. Looks pretty good, but I think I want to grow it one more pixel. There we go, and then fill that with black. Okay. Oops. None. Use Control D and that duplicated. Okay, so then I'll desaturate. Okay, and I'll save this as a different image, and we'll see what that can do for my bumps in the carpet. I might want to increase the contrast also to get better bumps out of this, but we'll just see how that does first. And then we'll create different levels of that. So I'll export this as a carpet tiles bump. 01. It's being saved in the same place, so there we go. Set the defaults, go back to 3ds Max, and check my bump channel, do the same thing, right? Drag it out into the screen, out into my viewport there, general bitmap. And I'll try the carpet tile bump. Now this wouldn't work so well if I don't match the number of tiles I have on this thing. So I had 60 and 30 here. So 60 and 30 go here. See if I can make some sense out of that. Although bump has less of an effect on a flat surface like that instead of like rounded or edge where I have a bunch of edges. We'll just see what it looks like. I might just get some bad grooves going on here. And I might also use that for the reflection, because this looks like it's weird. You know, you don't expect carpet to be that reflective, so I might just change that up a bit. But anyway, you get the idea. I might want to make those black grooves. Well, I don't know, that looks fine. Not that great. So in the reflections, though, I can see where the bump is trying to affect the reflections of the table legs and the floor, which is a little odd, but there you go. So in this physical map, change it to advanced. And so under reflections, I want that to be a pretty low number. A little bit of reflection, because carpet can reflect a little bit. Maybe 0.2, I'll try that. Yeah, too much still, because I'm seeing reflections of that, of the table legs and the floor, but it's a little better. Let's try 0.02. So doesn't that pop more as like regular carpet? Even without lighting, this seems like sort of like carpet now. Okay, so let's see. I don't want to spend too much time doing that, but any questions though? Before we... So most objects have their own internal coordinate system that can be mapped on top of each, so that these maps, right, images can be mapped or skinned on top of the surface. If they don't, like if I lathe, you know, if I wanted to have some sort of surface on this milk bottle or on this vase or bucket, pot, I might want to add what's called, I'll try this milk bottle, I think you can add your own on the loft. Doesn't look like it actually. UVW mapping to it. So you can unwrap it too, which we'll get into later, but not today. We'll just use a UVW map. So that looks at the milk bottle, and right now by default it's on plane, right? And so it's just mapping it planar, which may actually be something that you want, because perhaps I want this to be glass also with like a whitish tint to it, I suppose. That might be kind of hard to do. Well, let's try that. So I got to add a material to this milk bottle. So with this mapping, I could use perhaps a label, right? So maybe we want to go here and milk label, milk carton label. Images. Okay, yeah, so maybe nutrition information, or here's one that gets wrapped, so I could unwrap it and use that as my wrapping. But yeah, I kind of just want a flat image. I'll just use this. This is nutrition information, right? So let's just save that file. I guess I'm saving it. Let's name it milk nutrition label 1. Okay. So I'm going to use my base color, general. And the purpose of this, well, is because it's being mapped on a plane, I could increase my tiling and change the size of the map and not actually tile it. So that's my idea. So let's see if we can get this to work. So milk nutrition and okay, and see how it's being tiled across it or mapped across it. How about I uncheck tile and increase the tile values by like 2, and then it becomes a label. And then I can offset it in the Y direction, so just put it there. And it looks like it's in the right direction. I could probably rotate that make sure it gets rotated in the right direction. But in our case, it's already up, straight up and down. But one of the things that happens with that is the material's getting blown out, right? So the whole material here is now being, there's no material on this milk bottle other than this map. So that doesn't quite work. I mean, I get the label on it, which is nice. One thing you can do, I think we can blend that, right? So I can change that base color. I thought I could blend that way, but I guess not. So another way to do that is just map it on a few of the polygons to get this map, and then the rest of the image gets that material ID. So I could just separate it by material IDs. I'm not sure which one I want to do, actually. I thought I could blend this. I don't suppose so. Is that available here? No. Doesn't look like it. Even if I'm not blending that or tiling it. So I'm going to put this map on map channel, let's try 5. And it goes away, but in the, well, I'm going to have to add an edit poly modifier here underneath the UVW map. So just real quick, add an edit poly so I can get to the polygons that I want to put that label on. Maybe that'll be our fastest way to make that work. So I'll just select, and I want it, I'd like to drag on that, but I don't want to move my polygons around, so I'm just going to get the regular select tool and then just select a group of polygons that I think the label should go on. Let's just choose those, and I'll change their map IDs, right? So there's they're just change their ID to 5, and that's it. Okay. At that point, I should be able to deselect. Oh, something is not oh, yeah, I forgot to change my UVW map and get out of subobject mode here. Come back up here and just use a box instead of a plane now. And that should let me use this map on this object, but I might have to use a multi subobject material to get both on there, because that's what it's looking like. Oh, so this should go to map number 5, and then a regular material. This is just going to be a color, so I can just do this to map number 1, and then drag that onto the milk bottle. So maybe I can get the milk bottle to be labeled. Doesn't look like that worked. I think I selected. So those should just have a 5 on them. Yes. And I'll switch the selection, Control I, and I'll set those to 1. So at that point, the material should just give me the milk bottle with the label. And maybe it's being tiled too much. So back to this, and tile it 1. And I should see the map. It might not show up. I don't have to render it, I guess. Let's erase that and try that. No, that label's not coming up. I don't know why. The edit poly, just setting those material IDs should allow, well, it looks like it's working for this material. And this should just get mapped to the ID 5. Map channel 5. One more try, and we'll have to defer. I'll have to look up why that's not working. But adding a, get out of that. Adding a UVW map just to channel 5 should work, but I thought I had that. We'll try it again. On top of the edit poly, and maybe I thought I had that, but maybe I didn't change that. So there's the label, but it's a little bit too big, and I get the color on it. So that was my problem. So you can add multiple UVW maps to different parts of your object depending on the material IDs of them. So then I just adjust the tiling, still not tiling it. I would need to offset to get it to fit. A little bit more tiling in the Y direction just to get that to fit. Well, something like that, I guess. It's close enough. Close enough. So now I have a milk bottle with a material on it and a label based on that just plainer UVW map just on map channel 5. So if I wanted to put another UVW map on that for map channel 1 and do something with the milk bottle other than just a plain color, that could be done too. So. All right, let's see. Sorry for the confusion there. That was adding maps to objects in a variety of ways. One, just on using a UVW map modifier to place it specifically on the floor with different bump channels. Any questions, comments? I kind of want to do one more. And then I'll stop talking. Okay, let's say I want to put a plant in this bucket, right? So maybe I would have just a line as the stem of the plant. Maybe I'll just use the front viewport and drag that out. And maybe it's just sticking out like this. Okay. And maybe it's going to be like a sunflower. I could just make, perhaps the easiest way would be to just make it renderable and give it a thickness, and there it is, right? Then come around here well, I'll leave that as the front view. I don't like to change that too much. And pass that around and use a sphere, perhaps. With auto grid, so it lines up in the direction of the. That totally missed it. It's not seeing that as a sphere. So because it's just a line, right? So one thing to do is convert that line into an editable poly so it sees those faces. So just by doing that and going back to sphere with the auto grid, now it recognizes the face and puts the sphere on that. Not too big. Okay. So most flowers don't look like that. But I do want to scale it. But I'm going to use a special scale called the squash tool. So that's the last in those list of scale tools. I also want to use the local coordinate system so I can squash it in the right direction. So there. So I'm going to squash it in the Z direction, and we can see that as I get it flatter in the Z, it expands it. So that's what squash does. It expands it in the other directions. And likewise, if I try to scale it down in the Y and Z, it will expand it in the X only. So if I just scale it in the Z, I can get like the center of a flower kind of looking thing going on like that. Is that right? Makes sense? Okay, I'm going to change this coordinate system to pick, and I'm going to pick this petal here. I guess I should name it. What's the center of a flower called? Any botanists in here? Can't remember. I'm going to call it the eye of the flower. It has a name. The stamen? No, that's not it. I can't remember. But I also want to create a petal, right? So like a sunflower might have like a petal, but I'm not real sure how to make them, so I'm going to, I don't know what they're shaped like, so I'm going to use the internet as a reference. So in the top view, I'm just going to, for scale, just put down a little plane about the size that I want the petal to be. Maybe something like that. Okay, and no, well, yeah, actually I do want some, because I'm going to bend it. Maybe something like that, I guess. Okay, so I'm going to just use a material and put it on that flower, right? So again, come back here and sunflower petal. See if I can find a good petal here. Just a single one would be great. If not, I have to Photoshop it or GIMP it. Oh, this. Thank you. That'll work. Let's copy it and use GIMP to create it from there. And I'll just use the center one, so I'll just crop everything else out, and we'll attribute Getty images to this nice. That'll work. Okay, just scaling that and get it to there. And I do want to copy this layer. I'm going to duplicate this layer because I'm going to make this layer black and white. Or how about this underlying one, black and white? So I'll just use the magic wand tool, fill that with black. Well, I can't see it until I do that. And then invert the selection and fill it with white. So this will be my alpha channel, right? So now I've just made a black and white image from the, that should be okay. It's a little weird. Okay, so I'm just going to export this out. Oh, I don't want the white. So actually, I'm going to delete this part of it as well. I think I need an alpha channel here. Now I can delete it. Oh, yeah, I did. Oops, missed that part. Okay. I might want to grow that as well. So alpha to selection and grow that up maybe half a pixel. I can't remember how many pixels there were. So select and grow and 1 pixel and then delete one more time. Invert and then delete. Well, grow that selection 2 pixels now because I was selecting the wrong one. Now delete. Hopefully that will get rid of some of the white binding around that, banding around it. Yeah, it looks a little better. I could have done a little more, but that's okay. So that I'm going to export into a format like a PNG, right? So just type in the extension, and that'll just go in that folder. Export. And then, oops, let's undo until I get that back. I think I deleted the wrong thing. Yeah, that might be it. Oop, keep going. There we go. So perhaps that's what I want to export out as my alpha channel. Sure, why not? So export that one as sunflower petal 01 alpha. So now I have 2 images from the same source. And there, thank you, Getty. And I'm going to add that to this plane. All right, so I can add another view. Perhaps I could name this flower. So I can have another view, right? So if my viewport gets crowded, do that. Add, use my base map. Did I name it sunflower petal? Oh yeah, I did. And open. All right. Let's add that to the selected object because it's still selected. And do I see that on the floor somewhere? Floating right there. Let's just see what that looks like rendered. Is that under the table? I think it is. There we go. So it has a black background. I'm okay with that for now. So how about I go to my transparency. Do I have to do this advanced? There's my transparency map. And do the same thing, but pick up the alpha, sunflower alpha. And hopefully I got that corrected. It's inverted, so I thought white was reveal and black was conceal, but I guess that's just Photoshop. So invert, right? So somewhere in here I can invert this. Invert. Okay, let's try that. There. So now it's just a petal, right? So adding that, okay, I don't have to spend that much time. So I would place this, right, and orient it with my, whatever the center of that thing is, right? So use the align tool and align that up with there. And that's pivot point to pivot point. That's okay, so I'm going to apply that, and I'll adjust it later. So I'm going to align the z-axes. That's all I need to do. And then I can move it just myself, locally, zooming in. I might hit U on the keyboard to make this a perspective into an orthographic, so I can zoom in closer without zooming through it. And that way I can move it in the X direction. How about put it up here? And just place it sort of in here. I can add a, I want to array that around. So using not the local coordinate, but the iFlower part, and using the reference coordinate system as, see now, well, actually with my rotate tool I need to do that. So iFlower and rotate. So when I rotate it, see how it rotates around the petal? So that's what I want to do. Okay, looks pretty bad right now, but let's hold the shift key, and maybe even a little overlap would be fine. How many degrees was that? I got to pay attention to that, because then I'll know how much to multiply it. And if I want to put the angle snap on, that might actually help too. So A for angle snap, shift, drag that a couple, maybe like that. That's 15 degrees, right? So how many copies of 15 degrees will get me 360? 24? Last time I checked, maybe. Let's try 24 copies, and there it goes around. Okay, looks bad, but rendered it won't look as bad. And I think they were all instances. Did I make instances? Can't remember now. Let's hold the shift key down. Oh, they were copies. Eesh. No. Undo. And try this again. 15 degrees, instanced, and 24. Okay, because they're instanced, I can add a bend modifier. And let's see if I get the right axis. I'm guessing now. Probably not the Z, but maybe. Definitely not the Z. X. Yeah. So I can fold them. Now they're being folded not at they're about their centers, right? But kind of want them this way though, right? And then I can change the center, local, along the X direction to get it folding kind of right at that point. Okay, I probably don't want it to bend that much. Something like that. Okay, I'm gonna add another bend because, you know, why not, right? Just kidding. And maybe I want to bend it around the Y-axis a little bit, so it folds it. Is that doing it the way I wanted it to? Change the direction. It's not the direction. Nope, it's Y. A little bit of bend, and then 90 degrees. It's kind of hard to tell. I can't really see what that looks like too much, but let's go back to perspective view and render that and see what we look like. I'm getting a little reflection, so I really need to turn the reflections down. Other than that, at least I see the petals and they're transparent. So I'll stop here after I change that reflection, for crying out loud. So here, and reflections, zero that out. And let's see. still getting a little refraction or something. I'll have to work on that. That should not show up. Anyway, I'll stop here and let you kind of add materials, start adding materials to your scene. We'll make this assignment due in next week sometime or something. We'll see how that works. And then we'll talk about lighting and stuff. But yeah, if you have questions, let me know.